The doors closed. I stood there, watching shadows dance behind frosted glass, feeling something inside me crack and then harden into steel. I drove home in silence, memory pulling me backward through years I'd tried to forget. Our childhood kitchen had always smelled like burnt toast and disappointment. I was 6, scrubbing dishes while Mom and Dad applauded Madison's ballet recital in the living room. Perfect form, Dad had shouted. Absolutely flawless. Mom found me later, soap suds up to my elbows. Why can't you be more like your sister? She makes everything look easy. Even then, I understood the hierarchy. Madison was golden. I was gray. She collected trophies while I collected responsibilities. She shone while I swept up the mess. I learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less demanding. I learned that love in our family came with conditions I couldn't meet. That night, lying in bed across the hall from Madison's trophy-filled room, I'd whispered into the darkness, "One day, I'll make something they can't ignore." But driving home from her engagement party, shame burning in my throat, I wondered if that promise had been nothing but a child's desperate dream. Monday morning arrived with cruel efficiency. I tied my apron behind my back at Rosie's diner, my fingers shaking slightly. The breakfast rush hit hard. I poured coffee, delivered pancakes, and smiled through exhaustion. Then my manager, Frank, called me to his cramped office. "Look, Harper, corporate restructuring. They want someone with more presence for the assistant manager position." "I've been here 4 years," I said quietly. "I know this place inside out." Frank wouldn't meet my eyes. "I know, but they've already made their choice." I didn't need to ask who. Through the kitchen window, I could see Madison at table 7, surrounded by her wealthy friends, laughing over mimosas like she owned the place. She caught my eye and raised her glass in mock salute. "Congratulations," I whispered, forcing the word past the lump in my throat. I served their table without trembling. When Madison left a 50-cent tip on a $70 bill, I pocketed it without expression. Consistency pays rent, I told myself, even when it costs your dignity. That evening, exhaustion followed me up 4 flights of stairs to my studio apartment. The mailbox yielded bills, junk mail, and 1 thick cream envelope. Gold embossed lettering announced, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Madison Quinn and Trent Ashford." Inside, Madison's handwriting sprawled across expensive cardstock. Dress code. Black tie formal. "Please come alone, immediate family only." The insult landed softly, like a knife wrapped in silk. I studied my reflection in the dark window. 26 years old, perpetually exhausted, perpetually forgotten. The girl who'd promised herself she'd matter someday. "You'll go?" I told my reflection. "Even if you have to wear courage instead of designer labels." I pinned the invitation to my corkboard. Next to overdue bills, the champagne tower caught the afternoon light like 1,000 tiny suns. I stood at the bottom of the marble steps, clutching a silver-wrapped gift, watching my sister Madison glide through the entrance in designer heels that cost more than my rent. Her engagement party. The one I'd driven 3 hours to attend. She saw me. Her smile froze mid-laugh. She whispered something to the security guard, and suddenly, he was blocking my path with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, miss. This is a private event." "I'm her sister," I said, confusion flooding through me. Madison appeared beside him, diamond earrings catching light like tiny warnings. "Harper, what are you doing here?" "You invited me." The gold envelope. That was before. She glanced at my thrift store dress, and something cold flickered across her face. "This is a luxury event. We can't have, well, you understand." The gift slipped from my hands. It hit the steps with a hollow thud that echoed through my chest. "My name is Harper Quinn," I whispered to no one. And that was the moment I realized blood doesn't guarantee belonging. And a faded photo of Madison and me as children, before everything changed. Before I learned that in our family, there wasn't room for 2 stars. The invitation stared back at me all week, a constant reminder of everything I wasn't. The rehearsal dinner took place at the Sterling Club, where membership cost more than I earned in 6 months. I wore my only dress appropriate for the occasion. Navy blue, 3 years old, perfectly clean but obviously inexpensive. The fabric felt thin against the room's opulence. Chandeliers dripped crystal. Champagne flowed like water. I stood near the back, clutching a glass of wine I couldn't afford to replace if I spilled it. Madison floated through the room in cream silk, accepting compliments like she was collecting taxes. When she introduced me to her future in-laws, her voice carried just enough warmth to sound genuine. "This is Harper, my sister. She works in hospitality." The pause before hospitality spoke volumes. Trent's mother smiled politely and immediately turned to someone more interesting. Later, I heard Mom's stage whisper behind a marble pillar, "We'll seat her in the back at the ceremony, with the venue staff. She'll blend in better there." I pressed my palm against the cold wall, steadying myself. Each word landed like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral, my smile fixed. Thursday morning, my car died in a cloud of smoke 2 blocks from the diner. The mechanic's diagnosis came with a $600 price tag. $600 I'd been saving for a wedding outfit that would help me blend into Madison's world for one single day. I stood in the auto shop parking lot, calculator app open, watching my dreams evaporate into mathematics. Rent or repairs. Food or fitting in. The thrift store downtown smelled like mothballs and other people's memories. I found a black dress in my size, simple and clean. $20. It would never pass as designer, but it was dignified. In the dressing room mirror, I looked exactly like what I was, someone pretending to belong somewhere she didn't. "Fine," I whispered to myself. "Let them see the truth. Let them see exactly who I am." I bought the dress with coins I'd been collecting in a jar. The cashier counted slowly, and I felt each second like a small humiliation. Outside, rain started falling. I had no umbrella. The dress got wet in its plastic bag. Perfect, I thought. Just perfect. Friday afternoon, the diner was nearly empty. I was wiping down tables when an older gentleman in an expensive suit sat in my section. "Coffee, please," he said, his voice warm. "And whatever you recommend." I brought him coffee and a slice of our famous apple pie. He took one bite and looked genuinely surprised. "This is exceptional. Did your chef make this?" "I did, actually," I admitted. "I baked the pies and desserts on the side." His eyebrows rose. "You made this? It's better than most 5-star establishments I visited." He pulled out a business card, cream-colored and elegant. "Lawson Heritage Estate, Director of Operations, Victor Lawson. If you're ever interested in doing something more with your talent, call me. We're always looking for exceptional people." I stared at the card long after he left, its weight somehow heavier than paper should be. It felt like a possibility. Like maybe the universe was offering me a door I didn't know existed. That night, I placed the card on my nightstand, right next to Madison's wedding invitation. 2 futures side by side. Saturday, I visited Madison's bridal suite at the hotel. I'd made her something. A bracelet woven from silver wire and tiny pearls, each one placed with hours of careful work. She opened the velvet box I'd wrapped it in, and her expression shifted from curiosity to something that looked almost like pity. "Oh, Harper, this is sweet." She held it between 2 fingers like it might contaminate her. Very handmade. Her bridesmaids giggled behind perfectly manicured hands. "Did you get this on Etsy?" one of them asked. "How rustic." Madison set it carefully aside. "Thank you. I'm sure I'll find somewhere to wear it. Maybe at a casual brunch sometime." I stood there for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then I turned and walked out before the tears could betray me. In the parking lot, I sat in my repaired car and let myself cry. Not from sadness anymore. From anger. From years of swallowing shame that was never mine to carry. I pulled out Victor Lawson's business card and stared at it until my vision cleared. Maybe it was time to stop begging for scraps from Madison's table. Monday morning, I called the number on the card. Victor answered on the second ring. "Mr. Lawson? This is Harper Quinn. We met at Rosie's diner on Friday. You said to call if I was interested in doing something more with my baking." Harper, I've been hoping you'd reach out. Can you meet me this afternoon? We met at a coffee shop with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in golden light. I brought a portfolio I'd assembled over the weekend. Photos of cakes I'd made for friends, testimonials, sketches of desserts I dreamed of creating. He studied each page carefully. You have vision. Real vision. Most people in this business are following trends. You're trying to create something meaningful. I want to make events special, I said quietly. Not just expensive. Special. He smiled. I'd like to fund your startup. Full investment for equipment, licensing, initial operating costs. On one condition. My heart was hammered. What condition? Don't think small. Dream bigger than you're comfortable with. I left that meeting floating 6 inches off the ground, contract in hand, future suddenly blazing with possibility. My first event was chaos wrapped in panic. The venue's oven died 2 hours before service. One of my hired servers quit via text message 30 minutes before guests arrived. I spent 45 minutes on the phone finding a replacement oven, then another hour adjusting recipes for different temperature calibrations. But when the couple cut into their cake at midnight, and the bride cried while thanking me for making her dream come true, something inside me shifted. This was real. This mattered. That night, I filed the business registration papers. Haven Events, creating meaningful celebrations for real people. I hung the certificate on my apartment wall, right next to the acceptance letter from culinary school I'd never been able to afford to attend. Madison had her wedding. Her status. Her designer life. I had something she'd never undersell it. Contract details Monday. I drove home slowly, mind racing through implications. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to ruin Madison's day. I just wanted to do my job with excellence. But somewhere in my chest, something that had been broken for years started feeling suspiciously like power, and the knowledge that I'd built something from nothing, with my own scarred hands and stubborn heart. The thought carried me through the exhaustion into dreams that didn't include begging for acceptance. 3 weeks later, I was working at the diner when I overheard familiar laughter. Madison sat in a corner booth with her bridesmaids, voices carrying over the lunch crowd. I was refilling water glasses 2 tables away. Did you hear Harper started some little catering business? Madison's voice dripped with amusement. She's doing birthday parties for people who can't afford real event planners. It's actually kind of sad. Her friends laughed on cue. Does she use those handmade decorations? Very Pinterest. The water pitcher trembled slightly in my hand. A year ago, those words would have crushed me. 6 months ago, they would have made me cry in the storage room. Now, I just feel tired. I finished my shift, drove home, and opened my laptop to find 3 new booking requests. A corporate event, an anniversary party, a non-profit gala. Keep watching, I whispered to the empty apartment. Just keep watching. By October, Haven Events had completed 12 successful events. Word spread through online reviews and genuine referrals, not from connections or status, but from quality. Then came the email that changed everything. Dear Ms. Quinn, Lawson Heritage Estate would like to discuss a partnership opportunity. We're seeking an exclusive catering company for all our events. Based on Victor's recommendation and your growing reputation, we'd like to meet. I read it 17 times, certain I'd misunderstood. Lawson Heritage Estate was legendary. Historic mansion, 20 acres of manicured gardens, the venue where senators and celebrities held their most important celebrations. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I accepted immediately, fingers shaking over the keyboard. That evening, I walked through Target, pricing professional attire I could actually afford now. The black dress in my cart wasn't designer, but it was new. It was mine. It was earned. In the checkout line, I saw a magazine with Madison on the cover, some local society feature about her upcoming wedding. I didn't buy it. The Lawson Heritage Estate took my breath away. Marble columns framed the entrance. Gardens stretched toward the horizon like something from a period film. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across hardwood floors that gleamed like mirrors. The events coordinator, a woman named Patricia, greeted me warmly. We've heard excellent things about Haven events. Victor speaks very highly of your work. She led me through the mansion, explaining their vision. We want a catering partner who understands elegance without pretension. Quality that serves the event, not overwhelms it. We discussed menus, logistics, and timing. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life. Our next major event is in 6 weeks, Patricia said, flipping through her calendar. A high-profile wedding. A very particular bride. It would be an excellent partnership debut. I'd be honored, I said. She smiled. Wonderful. The bride is Madison Quinn. I believe you two are acquainted. The room tilted slightly. My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. Yes, I managed. We're acquainted. I sat in my car in the estate parking lot for 20 minutes after the meeting ended. Madison. Of course it was Madison. The universe had a sense of humor sharp enough to draw blood. I pulled out my phone and found the wedding invitation still saved in my photos. Madison Quinn and Trent Ashford request your presence. I'd been uninvited from the ceremony. Cut from family photos. Seated with staff. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest. Not quite joy, not quite revenge. Something stranger and more complicated. I texted Patricia. I accept a partnership. All events, including the Quinn wedding. Her response came quickly. The kind that comes from competence, not cruelty. The first planning meeting happened on a Tuesday that felt like stepping into an alternate reality. I arrived at the estate conference room with my portfolio, sample menus, and a calm I didn't entirely feel. The door opened, and there sat Madison with Trent, Mom, Dad, and Patricia. Madison's laugh died mid-sound. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, disbelief. Harper. She half stood from her chair. What are you doing here? Patricia glanced between us, clearly sensing undercurrents. Harper Quinn is the owner of Haven Events. She'll be managing all catering and coordination for your wedding. The silence lasted 3 beats too long. Mom spoke first, voice carefully neutral. I didn't realize you'd expanded your baking hobby, Harper. It's not a hobby anymore, I said quietly. I placed my portfolio on the table. These are sample menus based on your initial requests. We can adjust anything to match your vision. Trent looked genuinely impressed. Dad's expression was unreadable. Madison stared at me like I'd materialized from another dimension. The power shift was subtle, but unmistakable. They needed me now, not the other way around. Over the following weeks, I led every decision. Menu tastings happened in the estate's demonstration kitchen. Madison tried to override my professional recommendations with Pinterest screenshots and vague demands. The appetizers need to feel more exclusive, she'd say. The current menu is restaurant quality. I'd respond calmly. But we can adjust portion sizes if you prefer smaller servings. Patricia backed me consistently. Harper is the expert. I'd trust her judgment. I watched Madison's frustration grow with each meeting. She was used to controlling everything, to being the center of attention, to getting her way through charm or money. But contracts had been signed. I owned this space professionally. Every polite suggestion I made, every decision I guided, reflected back the years she'd spent making me feel small. Not through cruelty, through competence. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was simply doing my job exceptionally well. And somehow, that felt more powerful than any revenge could have been. The tables hadn't just turned. They'd been completely rebuilt, and I was holding the blueprint. 3 weeks before the wedding, Patricia called me into her office with concern etched across her face. We have a situation with the Quinn account. Their payment is overdue, and when I contacted their bank, there were complications. She showed me the paperwork. Declined cards. Payment plans requested. Late fees accumulating. This is a $300,000 event, Patricia said carefully. We need to verify they can actually pay before we continue preparations. I'd learned about Madison's financial troubles through whispers, through Frank at the diner mentioning that Trent's business had some difficulties. But seeing it documented was different. What do you need from me? I asked. As our catering partner, you need full payment upfront. Estate policy. We can't risk vendors losing money if the client can't pay. I drafted the payment requirement email professionally, without emotion. 48 hours to provide full payment or we'd need to pause preparations. When Madison called that evening, her voice vibrated with barely controlled panic. You can't demand full payment now. That's not standard practice. It's a state policy, I said calmly, and contract standard for events over a certain threshold. The silence on her end felt heavy, with things unsaid. 2 days later, Madison called again. This time, her voice was different, smaller, almost vulnerable. Harper, can we talk? Just us. We met at a coffee shop far from both our neighborhoods. She looked tired, her usual polish slightly dimmed. Look, I know things have been complicated between us. And I know I haven't always been fair to you. She stared into her untouched latte. Can we just keep things professional? Get through this wedding without making it harder than it needs to be. I studied her face, looking for genuine remorse. I found exhaustion, pride struggling with necessity, but nothing that felt like real understanding of what she'd done. Professional is all I've ever wanted, I said quietly. I'm not trying to make this difficult, Madison. I'm just doing my job. I know. She fidgeted with her engagement ring. It's just strange, you being in charge of everything. It feels like... Like what? Like you're proving something. I stood to leave. I have nothing to prove. Not to you. The truth was simpler and sadder than revenge. I'd simply built a life she couldn't control, and that disoriented her more than any cruelty ever could. The day before the wedding, I walked the estate grounds with Victor, inspecting final details. Fairy lights wound through ancient oak trees. Tables gleamed under temporary pavilions. The ceremony space looked like something from a dream, all white roses and golden sunset light. You've created something beautiful here, Victor said, surveying the scene with satisfaction. Not just this event. Haven Events itself. You've built something meaningful. I thought about the girl who'd stood at the bottom of marble steps, holding a rejected gift, feeling like she'd never be enough. They made me feel invisible, I said quietly. For so long, I thought that was true. That I was somehow less than Madison, less than what our family needed. Victor's expression was kind. And now I know I was never the problem. I was just standing in the wrong rooms, asking the wrong people to see my value. The evening light caught the edges of everything, making the whole scene glow. Tomorrow, Madison would walk down an aisle I'd helped create. And I'd watch from a position of respect, not shame. That felt like enough. Wedding morning arrived with golden light and immediate chaos. The florist delivered wrong centerpieces. Madison's mother called 17 times before 8 a.m. Trent's best man got food poisoning. A bridesmaid's dress zipper broke. I moved through it all like a conductor through an orchestra, calm, methodical, solving each crisis as it emerged. Madison appeared in the prep kitchen at 9:30, already in her robe, makeup half finished. The programs are wrong. They misspelled Trent's mother's name. Her voice cracked slightly. Everything's falling apart. It's not falling apart, I said, pulling up the digital file. We'll have corrected programs printed within an hour. Everything else is on schedule. She stared at me. How are you so calm? Because I've planned for problems. That's the job. For a moment, something shifted in her expression. Not quite respect, but recognition. She nodded once and left. By noon, every crisis was resolved. Flowers corrected, backup dress alterations completed, programs perfect. The ceremony would start at 2. I had 90 minutes to ensure everything was flawless. At 1:15, I was arranging final bouquet details near the ceremony entrance when Madison's voice cut through the organized chaos. What is she doing here? Her tone carried that familiar edge, the one that used to make me small. She's not supposed to be visible. She's staff. I turned slowly. Madison stood in her full wedding gown, 3 bridesmaids flanking her like backup singers. A security guard stepped forward, confusion flickering across his face as he looked between us. The moment crystallized into perfect, painful symmetry, me, standing at the threshold of an event, being told I didn't belong. Just like her engagement party. Just like always. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't holding a rejected gift. I was holding a clipboard with every detail of her wedding documented in my handwriting. This time, I didn't flinch. "Madison," I said quietly, "we need to stay on schedule." "I want her removed from sight," Madison insisted, voice rising. "This is my wedding. I don't want her anywhere guests can see her." The guard moved toward me hesitantly, clearly uncertain about the protocol. Then Victor's voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. "She's not a guest." Victor appeared from the main hall, his presence commanding immediate attention. Patricia stood beside him, expression professional but firm. "Harper Quinn is the director of this event," Victor continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. "She coordinates everything happening here today. If you have concerns about the wedding, you bring them to her, not the other way around." The air seemed to freeze. Madison's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and something that might have been delayed understanding. Guests were beginning to gather near the entrance, and several had stopped to watch the scene unfold. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "But she's my sister," Madison said weakly. "She's not supposed to be working. She's supposed to be." "Where?" I asked softly. "Seated in the back with staff. Kept out of photos? Made invisible so I don't embarrass you." The truth hung between us like smoke. Patricia checked her watch. "We have 12 minutes before the processional. I suggest everyone take their positions." Madison stared at me for 3 long seconds. Then she turned and walked toward the bridal suite, her bridesmaids trailing behind in uncomfortable silence. I exhaled slowly, realizing my hands had been shaking. The ceremony was flawless. Madison walked down an aisle lined with roses I'd chosen. She said vows under an arch I designed. Guests ate appetizers I'd perfected through dozens of test batches. During the reception, I moved through the shadows of the event, ensuring every course arrived on time, every guest was attended to, every crisis was invisible to everyone but me. I watched my parents laugh at their table. I watched Trent's family toast with champagne I'd selected. I watched Madison smile for photos that would pretend this day had been perfect. But word spreads fast at events like these. By the time dinner was served, at least half the guests knew the story. The poor sister everyone had looked down on was actually running the entire celebration. I heard whispers as I passed. Saw people pointing discreetly. Trent's father cornered Madison near the cake table, his voice low but clearly agitated. Their carefully constructed image was cracking in real time, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I hadn't caused it. I'd simply existed in a space they'd tried to deny me. Sometimes the truth tells itself. By Sunday afternoon, the story had exploded across social media. Anonymous guests had posted about the sister drama at the Quinn wedding. Local gossip blogs picked it up. By Monday, it had reached regional news as a human interest piece, not about me specifically, but about the financial facade many couples maintained. Lavish wedding funded entirely by credit. Local couple faces financial scrutiny after $300,000 celebration. Madison's carefully curated image shattered like the champagne glasses her guests had toasted with. My parents called Tuesday evening. Mom's voice was tight, controlled. "Harper, your sister needs a family right now. This media attention is destroying her. Can't you help somehow?" "Help how?" I asked quietly. "Talk to your connections. That estate director. Make this go away." I stared at my apartment ceiling, thinking about every time they'd made me feel insufficient, every time they'd chosen Madison's comfort over my dignity. "I can't rebuild what she destroyed," I said finally. "I'm sorry. You're her sister," Dad said on speaker, voice harder. "Family helps family." "I learned that from you," I replied. "The help only flows one direction in our family, and it was never toward me." I hung up, turned off my phone, sat in silence that felt surprisingly peaceful. 3 months later, my new office overlooked downtown from the 4th floor of a renovated building. Haven Events in silver letters across frosted glass. A team of 6 people who believed in creating meaningful celebrations, not just expensive ones. A calendar booked solid through next summer. I was packing my bag to leave for the day when I found Madison's bracelet in my desk drawer, the one she dismissed as handmade and rustic. The silver had tarnished slightly, but the pearls still caught the light. I'd made it with hope that she'd see the hours of care woven into each link. She'd seen only something she could mock. I slipped it onto my wrist anyway. Not for her. For the girl I'd been when I made it, the one who'd still believed family meant something different than it did. My phone buzzed. A new inquiry, a couple planning their 10th anniversary, budget modest, dreams enormous. Exactly my specialty. I smiled and typed a response. They'd cut me from Madison's wedding because I was too poor, too embarrassing, too insufficient. But dignity had never been about money. It was about knowing your worth, even when everyone around you insisted you had none. I locked my office, the bracelet catching evening light on my wrist. I'd built something real. Something mine. Something no one could take away or make me feel small about. And that felt like winning without needing anyone to lose.